You are listening to the Small Town Big Talk Show, the weekly podcast for small town people with big dreams and ideas. I'm your host, Rebecca Undum, and each week we'll cover a topic meant to inspire, encourage, and empower you to live big in your small town. Although it has its challenges, nothing beats small town living, and we're committed to sharing the best of what's working in the communities we serve. So enjoy this episode, and we hope it helps you to bloom where you've been planted. Hello, friends. My guest on today's episode is none other than the one and only Patrick Kirby. Patrick is the founder of Do Good Better Consulting, which is a nonprofit consulting firm in Fargo, North Dakota. And he's the author of the new book, Fundraise Awesomer, a practical guide to staying sane while doing good. And Patrick is my good buddy. Man, we had fun on this interview. We cover a range of topics, but this is all related directly to how small town nonprofits and community organizations can take a fresh approach to fundraising. We talk about butter braids in this episode and pizzas and how those simple, easy to implement fundraisers, while simple and easy to implement, are maybe a little stale, a little boring, and aren't necessarily getting the impact that we are all looking for with the groups that we're a part of. So many valuable nuggets of wisdom here. Plus, we offer at the end to compile your questions. So shoot any questions that you have for Patrick. You can send them to me at rebecca@rebeccaundum.com. And we will compile them and do a follow-up, or 2 or 15, like he mentions at the end. We'll do some follow-up episodes with Patrick because this is such an important topic for all of us that are part of community organizations. Many of them have fundraising needs. And so you guys are going to love this episode with my friend, Patrick Kirby. Hey, Patrick.
What's up?
What's up? Oh, yeah, here we are.
We did it. We're finally on a podcast together. I've dreamed about this for many a moon. So
there
happening.
Been a few conversations that the world really could have benefited from listening to.
There are car rides, phone conversations, and everything in between. If we only push record.
I know. And now we did. So look at us.
I love it.
So I just actually said, we don't work in the same building. That's how we met, which is cool. We met working at the same nonprofit. But you are like my work husband.
Yes.
We tend to move through the world in kind of a similar way. You with maybe a little more flair, if we're being honest.
Way more hand gestures. I'll give you that.
And jazz hands. Ideally. But you're one of the people that I turn to when I have questions about what I'm doing. And it's just, we've always had this super fun synergy about work and about life and about business. And it's just super fun to have you on finally.
Well, I appreciate it too. And again, same here, because again, when I kind of started my own thing, you were the last piece to the puzzle of when should I jump. And again, I tell the story to as many people as possible when talking about entrepreneurship or when you should take a leap or when you should start your own business. I will always tell them the story when you asked me that simple question of what's the worst that can happen? And then I had no answer for it. And then you just stared at me with a blank, stare. And I said, well, damn it. Now you're right. I'll just do it. And that's fine. And that's how it started. Literally, that's how it started.
RBF face. Yeah. Looked at you like, come on, Patrick. And I think this is a valuable thing to bring up for people that might be listening, because we're going to talk about fundraising and nonprofits specifically in small towns. But I think a lot of times there are people that have the idea on their heart, or they have the vision in their head, and maybe it's both. It's like burning inside of them. And it's freaking scary. Yeah. Okay. Right. And you were, at the time, you already had 3 children. You have a family to feed, that whole thing. And it can feel very heavy and very scary. Yeah. And the whole thing with what's the worst that can happen also comes back to, are you going to let your family starve? Is that what you're telling me? If this doesn't go the way you want it to, are you employable? Can you do something? Can you flip? I mean, really. And it comes down to, you would flip burgers. You would do whatever you actually needed to do to make sure that your family was okay.
Yes.
But once you just put it out there like that, you kind of go, oh yeah, I guess we got this.
Yeah, it's exactly right. And so I think, but you need somebody occasionally to tell you that, because you can tell yourself that a million times, but if you don't hear it, if you don't hear that reverberating, but from some other voice other than your, in mine specifically, my nasally droning voice in my ear, it doesn't make much sense. And so I think that clarification, that third party, endorsement of what you have in your heart or in your brain, and get after it. So.
Right. And then, so here we are now, over a year later, Do Good Better Consulting, which is
2 years. Can you believe it?
2 full years?
2 full years.
Holy smokes. Well, I'm like a total work wife because we forget each other's anniversaries. How crappy.
Exactly right.
So that's incredible though, because you have done some amazing things with your business and you're supporting people like crazy. And I love your work. And I think what's really fun, you recently published your book, Fundraise Awesomer, which is filled with delightful memes and Game of Thrones references, plus some good nuggets of wisdom for how to fundraise better. And we, on my Facebook page, we had done a giveaway for your book.
Yes.
And that was really fun. And a lot of people got your book in their hands. And I think when I think about small towns or what makes small towns challenging from a nonprofit standpoint, and this is kind of what I wanted to get your thoughts on for the people that are going to be listening to this, a few things. There's volunteer burnout.
Yep.
There's organizer and or committee burnout, just burnout all around. And then I think sometimes in small towns, we struggle to innovate on the fundraising side of things. Like, what could we do that is different or interesting? In fact, just yesterday, I was talking to our school board president, and we were talking about some of every little group within the school system, even like DECA and student council, right? All of these things, really important groups in small towns. And I think fundraising, it gets stale. And all parents, I'm just going to right now go ahead, speak for every parent on the planet. We don't freaking want to buy freezer food items. And again, that's easy. So we go with it because it's easy, right? But then it also, there's no impact. It doesn't get our hearts as donors. It doesn't do the things that like a better, maybe more strategic fundraising plan maybe could or should do.
I refer to that as transactional. It's I have a product, you give me a product, I give you money, I feel good for the 14 seconds it takes to eat or consume whatever I purchased, and I help the school. That's it. There's nothing else behind it other than you asked me, I had an extra $20. I'm probably going to ask you next week when my kid has a snack of popcorn or another frozen pizza to sell you.
Yep.
And we're going to keep exchanging $20 bills back and forth for however many kids we have that are walking down the street or main avenue, and that's what it's going to be.
Right.
And it's almost a zero-sum game when you're talking with so many families, and especially in small towns, is that it's the same thing over and over again. There's no difference, and nobody's motivated by it. And every time, and again, you know this, every time you get one of those letters in your kid's backpack of like, hey, it's another fundraiser for this, you roll your eyes. You're like, oh God, how much money do they need consistently? And I think that's where the burnout happens real quickly. People would rather just write a check, which is actually interesting. We can talk about that too, because most people would rather just write a check. I don't want more crap, or I don't need more things, or I've already gained 40 pounds. I don't need more pizza or butter braids or whatever the hell you're doing. And so
butter braids.
Check. Yeah, so I have 17 butter braids in my freezer.
Of course you do.
You know why? Because it takes 400 hours to make. Let it de-thaw, and then you need to wrap it, let it rise, and then you bake it for whatever. And then I'm like, it's just so much work.
Here's my $50. Take it and run.
Take it and stop. Yeah. I will pay you not to give me crap.
And let me just say, because I really try to be sensitive to the fact that this is not a stripping down of the intentions of the people, or, literally you're given very few options as far as, and I'm sorry, but any literature that comes to an organizer that says the easiest fundraiser you'll ever do, they're like, hell yeah, give it over and let me, so that's why everybody's selling butter braids and pizzas, because it's relatively easy.
Yes. It's mindless. And it's transactional, and people are very used to going to a store and buying things and giving people money, and they get something in return. So it's very easy to do because it's just not out of anybody's comfort zone.
Right.
The problem, like you alluded to, is that nobody's invested. Nobody cares after the purchase or the donation. And it really doesn't connect what larger issue, larger mission, larger audacious goal that the school or the church or the small group or the whatever is trying to achieve. And so you don't get continuous support. You don't get people picking up the phone and saying, how else can I help? Because you don't have to tell a story. You don't have to develop talking points. You don't have to be enthusiastic about it. You just go through the freaking motions. And that's really, really annoying.
Yeah. So, oh my gosh, what I love, well, I love everything that you just said. And I really hope that we can parcel out some of the pieces of this so like the people listening can say, we like legitimately never thought of just doing that or trying that, like give people some tangible things they can try. But I think you just defined the cycle of burnout because transactional stuff by its very nature has to be repeated over and over and over. And the onus is on you to initiate it. Like you said, I'm not calling up my favorite Girl Scout. I'm not. And saying like, when are the cookies coming? Because I know they're coming. Right? So it doesn't create any buy-in or initiative on the part of the donor, so to speak. Right?
No.
And that's why everyone gets so tired.
I know. And as ironic as it is, spending time talking about the importance or impact of what that fundraising piece could be, where that's not transactional. And as exhausting as you think it might be, explaining that story or explaining how their investment in this program or building or a field trip is going to be will garner you more money in the long run, is more mentally stimulating than it is transactional, and will eventually raise you exponentially more money. But you got to do a lot of heavy lifting in the front end of this stuff. And I think that's what turns people off from the idea of fundraising in the first place, because they don't think they have the time and they don't think they want to put in the effort, even though they keep doing the same thing over and over again, which is the definition of insanity, which is doing these pizza fundraisers 4 times a year.
Right.
And again, going back to this thing, I would rather write a check. Everybody else who you come in contact with would just rather write a check, unless you're really into like Pizza Corner pizza. And, get back that original recipe and maybe you've got
I was just going to say, like, since the rebrand, hardly.
Hardly. Not going to be good anymore. So I think part of the challenge in small towns especially is there's a lot of need. How do you differentiate yourself from everyone else? How do you, quote, compete with the churches and the schools or the regular, the consistent Lions Club or whatever, the consistent fundraising gurus in the community? And
not feel like a grade A prick about it too.
Of course. Yeah.
Because we are technically all competing for the same pot of money, not all of the nonprofits. And I know you have thoughts about that, which is so important. But I was in a committee meeting for one of the nonprofits I'm a part of. And someone in the group actually said, well, just remember, the firemen's group, they're raising money. The school's raising money for the track. And I was like, oh, I wish Patrick were here. Because I mean, you and I have talked about this. Yep. That's a mindset thing. So I interrupted your thought, but I think the whole thing is like, competing for money is one thing that feels legitimate, but then you feel like a prick, you feel like a jerk.
Yeah.
But you're not going to them and saying, don't give money to that. Give it to me. That's not the message. So how do we overcome that? What is your philosophy?
So first things first, you have to realize that area is so much money in the world. There is so much money in your community. There is more money than they who have it know what to do with. And having this scarcity mindset of, if I give my $20 to you, I can't afford the $20 I give to the fireman's stag ball, is ridiculous. There is more financial capacity in small towns, especially in the Midwest. People who have hidden money, land, livestock, regardless of what you read from a soybean or whatever pricing globally. These people, and you know who they are, or maybe you even don't, which is, I think, is another topic we can talk about too, is how to find those people. But your community has a crap load of money. And the idea that you're stealing from you're robbing Peter to pay Paul is ridiculous. Your job as a fundraiser, whether you're doing it professionally or amateurly, or just you're forced to do it because the school told you to do it, is matching the donor with their desire to help. It's not about you. It's not about the organization's need to have gifts. It's about the donor's need to feel appreciated and that their money is going to the right place. If you find somebody whose heart of hearts said, I really like kids more than anything else, I don't like dogs, I don't like old people, whatever the case may be, like I like kids. If you find that person, match that person financially with an organization that helps kids. And then don't even sell them. Tell the story about what their gift is going to do impactfully for generations to come. If you say, I need scholarship money because this is going to help kids who have lesser means than other people, they'll be able to afford a scholarship, they can get educated, they can come back, they can stay in our community, they can build a job, they can hire people, they can become this financial, well-to-do, high-capacity individual like yourself eventually, but they need to start somewhere, and you're the key to this. You're key to unlocking it. That's a great story to tell. Or if you really like animals, like if we're going to keep, we're going to put animals into loving homes so we don't have to keep them at the local pound or shelter and spend a lot more money. They are going to be a lot less burdensome on the community without killing them or without putting them down if they're put into loving homes. And then we do that here, here, and here. Like those are the compelling stories that you can have a conversation that people will write checks to that you don't need to give them anything for. Because the act of them making impact is the gift.
Okay, several things that I'm thinking about. I've talked about this before. So as part of our Chamber of Commerce, so do you feel like this also falls in line with any organization that has to get sponsorships from local businesses? Because I've made this case before, and I don't think I get a lot of, like, that makes sense, Rebecca. Like, I think people go, nah, that's BS, and you're just oversimplifying it. But I've said before that as a business, you get to decide the alignment that you want to have with which activities. Like, everyone's going to hit you up for everything, but you actually don't need to say yes to everything.
No.
You feel like is that true? B, is that a reasonable thing? And then C, will there be enough to go around so that everything gets covered? I believe yes, and yes. But
yes, yes, and yes. I agree with you 100%. First of all, there can be no better use of your mental capacity than to simplify your fundraising. If you do nothing else, simplify everything. Do not complicate this, because fundraising is hard enough as it is, and people, are challenged enough as it is to go out and ask for money. So simplify everything. The other thing, and I heard from a well-to-do community member who also runs one of the larger banks here in Fargo, say that he is getting really close to the point of loathing this sort of nuclearizing sponsorships and this escalation of weaponizing sponsorships because we're better than this other business, we're better than this other business. And they've gotten to the point where they're just going to close the spigot and give to what they want to give. And they wanted my thoughts. And I said, that's the smartest thing to do, because it's going to make you feel better as an organization. You feel better as a business. It's going to make the organizations who are going to get more money make a bigger impact, and you're not sprinkling it in $100 bills elsewhere. And then it's also going to allow other businesses to coalesce around the idea of giving more to giving fewer organizations to make bigger impact. I think the whole concept of streamlining and simplifying your 100 gifts of $10 to 10 gifts of $1,000 is going to make way more difference. And that's not eliminating from your community obligation to support people. It's not at all. In fact, you're supporting them more, because what's more impactful? If I give you $10 and say, hey, great, I hope you do well with this, or I give you $1,000. If I give 10 organizations $100, it's not going to do much. But if I give one organization $1,000, they can do a lot with it, or they can double down, they can buy, and they can invest in something. And I think that's the mentality of abundance. where there are a lot of businesses who can also give you $1,000. And they don't have to give everybody 100 because it doesn't fit well and align with their their sense of internal giving. And it's okay. And as organizations, we have to say it's okay to say no, right? And it's okay to accept the fact that this business doesn't want to give to us because it's okay because there's plenty of money out there. And if you are relying on $100 gifts, you're wasting your time. It's way more time effective to spend all your time trying to get a $5,000 gift than it is to go and collecting $1,050 gifts. From a time standpoint, it's going to save you headache. That avoids burnout.
Right.
That avoids burnout, which is one of the number one things in small towns and small communities is, how am I going to do this consistently over and over again? I got to go knock on 1,000 doors for $50. Well, knock on one door for $5,000. You don't have to do that anymore.
Right. Okay. So to that point, how do we find our highest capacity donors? How do we do that? Like, what's your strategies for that in small towns?
So
I feel like people are going to be like, he just said our small towns are rich. We're not rich.
Yep. First of all, if you don't think your small towns are rich, you're wrong. And I hate to say that, but you're wrong.
You can say
a lot of it's hidden. It's the gentleman or the family that buys a brand new pickup every single year in the same color, same make, same model.
This is one of my jokes.
The funny part, it's funny because it's true.
That's right.
And they buy the same thing because they don't want their neighbor Phil, even though Phil knows damn well he bought a new truck.
Right.
But they buy the same, and then they hide it in a shed in the back of their property so that nobody sees it. And they only drive it at night because they don't want their friends to know that they bought a new truck.
Because you might be doing well, and we don't want anybody to know we're doing well.
It's just ridiculous.
It is. So, that makes me crazy.
Yeah,
but
it drives me crazy. So a lot of it is rethinking and realigning your own community with the idea that supporting groups is not a bad thing, or being generous is not a bad thing. And we have this terrible Midwestern sort of thing where we don't like to celebrate what we do to support each other. Like, hey, just don't tell anybody about this, or I don't need recognition. And really, it's a if not us, who mentality that I think small towns have to start adopting. The government is not going to support your social ills, woes, or challenges because they don't have the money to. They don't have any care. They don't care about your little issues that you know are big, but they can't, shouldn't, or won't fund it, whatever the reason is. And so I think small towns have to rally around the idea, if it's not us as a community supporting these groups or these things that we find or value more than others, nobody else is going to do it. And if that is something that the community is hell-bent on supporting, you can find people to do it. It's all in your presentation and the establishment of, we think this is a great opportunity to rally the troops around this program, service, or whatever, or building or project.
Yeah.
We think it's going to be good because it's going to do this, this, and this. Simple talking points. We would love you to consider supporting us, and we'd love you to be a part of it. 80% of your funding is going to come from 20% of the people. And what the 80% of the people need to do is also support it, so that the 20% don't feel like they are the only ones supporting these projects. And so it doesn't matter how much money they support it with. It's the matter that they do support it. And then those 20%, those really high capacity individuals who are sort of closed off and they hide their money really well, will come and step forward, whether anonymously or not, but they'll help fund it if they know that they're not the only ones.
Right. I think we also culturally have this really terrible thing where it's like, if you have the capacity to give a lot of money, then we almost resent you for that.
Yes.
Have you seen that in the communities that you've worked with?
Yep. And in fact, I've got a great story for you. There's a gentleman who gave a very major gift to an organization and who wanted to. He said, I believe in this. This is what I really want to do. And I'm excited about what my good fortune has brought throughout my life, and I'm very excited to do this. And the minute he gave it, his phone never stopped ringing for people coming out of the woodwork and asking them for money.
Sure.
He's like, the worst thing that I ever did was give generously. And what a terrible thing to.
Oh, it's horrible.
It's a horrible thing to burden somebody. He's like, now every sob story across the land is now saw that I gave a gift. And rather than being appreciated for it, it was like, well, shit, this guy's got money. I need to go and bang down his door because he'll give it to people. And that's not how it works. And I think communities need to rally around those they know that have capacity and say, we're appreciative of you. We know that this is what you love. And that we're collectively agreeing that you get to pick and choose because nobody has to give. That's the other thing. Nobody is pointing a gun to anybody's head and saying, you have to give. Yeah, you're well off. You're well-to-do. You need to give. No, they don't. They don't have to do anything.
Right.
And the fact that they volunteer the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune to give generously is ridiculous. And I think small towns, small communities need to embrace the idea and really change their mindset to say those who are in our community who give generously should be celebrated.
Yeah.
And appreciated more than they are, rather than seen as an ATM.
Yeah, this is so relevant. So you and I haven't talked about this, but I'm on our community foundation board. Mm-hmm. And our community foundation was started with the gift of one couple.
Yeah.
And this year, his wife has since passed away. He is willing to actually match our entire community's fundraising goal up to $100,000. I mean, it's significant, right? It is amazing. And I'm just going to say it, like I'm actually going right public on record and saying that I've been on the board for I think 3 years. Every year we do some fundraisers and things. And there have been times that I've brought up the foundation and they say, is this one associated with, and then they name him. And I say, yep. And then they go, well, then I don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah.
It's like in my brain, I'm thinking, I don't understand that. And yet this is what it is. What we're talking about is that feeling of like, well, I could give generously too if I was a millionaire. But you don't, okay, A, you don't know that that's actually true. And nope. B, they don't have to do it. And they're still choosing to do it. And I don't understand why we wouldn't be grateful and appreciative for what that does for our community.
I think part of it as a culture in small towns, especially, is that the comparison game happens all the time.
Yeah, it does.
So his $100,000 gift is the equivalent to your $1,000 gift. And we don't think about that way. Like the way that you gave $1,000 to the school is exactly monetarily the same way that he gave $100,000.
Right.
Because he's richer than you. And who cares? And I think the resentment or whatever they've got going on there really is a cultural issue. So really small towns, I think, are challenged to say and really agree publicly and agree in private that generosity, regardless of size of gift, is important, and that we need to lift up, celebrate, and appreciate those that do their best to give as generously as possible to make the biggest amount of impact without burdening them with the social pariah status that I think like a lot of small towns do. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Mm-hmm. They go around with a giant D on their chests, not the A or whatever. Right. So I think that's really D for donor and not for anything else. Just in case you can just like,
I got it. I got it.
Well, it's hard.
There again.
You and I can see each other. Right? This is going to be an audio version. I got to explain.
That's right. Yeah. D for donor.
For donor. For a donor. Anyway, so I do think that's really important, and I think that needs to have a conversation in the influencers within your town. And I think as influencers, you have an obligation to really reestablish the bar on what giving means and how you celebrate all things. I really do.
Yep. Okay. Love that. So let's talk for just a second about some tangible ways that the smallest of nonprofits, like you got one person.
Yeah.
How do they start to kind of pivot away from this transactional kind of fundraising campaigns to more of a storytelling, heartstrings pulling? I mean, so they can actually find the people that care about their cause. What are some tactical ways people can do that?
So the first and best and easiest thing to do is know your impact. Know your numbers, know your impact, right? And I ask a lot of organizations this. If I gave you $1,000 right now, what does that do?
Right.
And you'd be surprised at how few organizations have an answer for that. So really knowing what a gift of whatever magnitude is given to you, what impact that's going to make. And as long as you have an idea of what that is, you can passionately and enthusiastically sell that to anybody. Like $1,000 is going to have a major impact because it's going to provide 10 children with a month's worth of school lunches that their parents don't have to worry about. Mm-hmm. So they can concentrate on school rather than concentrate on being hungry, which means they can get better grades, which means they can get a better career path through either whatever education route they take, and they can feel like they are not different than everybody else in their class. That has a residual, step-by-step sort of future process of them having better self-esteem, which means they'll use drugs or alcohol or find some other sort of metric to make themselves feel better, which means the rabbit hole that they can go down by any stretch of the imagination is not going to be the right track. And then their families are less apt to be embarrassed by whatever act in a small town a child acts out, because it all started from them being hungry and embarrassed about not being able to eat, right? So you can make these stories,
right,
which are legitimate. You can draw a path to it, sort of concepts and impact. That now $1,000 has a multi-generational impact from something of providing kids who have no other means of providing for themselves, providing kids with meals. And right there changes the game, because you're not asking for a meal. You're asking to feed 10 kids for a month. So whatever your metrics are and whatever your impact is, you need to be really specific about that. And I think that's really one of the main and first things you have to do as an organization, regardless of your size, is really get down to the nitty-gritty of why you exist. If you go away, what happens? That's a good question to ask yourself. If your organization is done today, you get your 501c3 pulled, you go under, what happens? And if it's critical to the success of your community, then you need to tell that story. Right. And then the next is having conversations exactly like that with as many people as possible, because you will find and listen to their reactions to your story and connect the dots to whether they'd be a really good person to jump on board for a large or impactful gift. And as simply put, it is get your story right of what your impact is and tell your story to as many people as possible. And if you can do those two things, the future is bright for your organization, because you're going to get matched with people who love the same things you do. You don't need to think about plan giving. You don't need to think about putting on $1 million gala. You don't need to be thinking about capital campaign gifts. You need to think about what your story is and who you're telling it to. That's it, period.
Right.
Simplified things.
So do events play a role?
They do, because it's a great way to capture the imagination and the enthusiasm of a lot of people at once. So your one-on-ones can be now one-to-many. But it's the same tactic. You need to know and tell a group of people that you are doing this and this is the impact, and here's how your money can help. We need your help. Would you consider supporting us? And those that buy into or feel compelled to give because they see the value in what you're doing will give. And those that won't. And that's okay too. So I think a lot of people are scared of events because it's a logistical nightmare and they're awful to do occasionally.
No question, right? No question. It can be challenging.
Right. But if you have your program, which is really the pinnacle of the event, if you have the program that says, I think we can do amazing things together as a community. This is what we're trying to fund, this specific thing we're trying to fund. This thing will have maximum impact here, here, and here. And it's because we did it as a community that's going to make the maximum impact, is we can celebrate about how we did it ourselves, because if not us, who? I think it's as simple as that. I really find people who overcomplicate that whole process of fundraising to be the ones that just don't see clarity, and they don't see the impact, and they don't see how fun this can be, and they don't see how matching somebody with something that they're very intrinsically attracted to, and they can then write a check to that organization. They see the power that they have now to help for good. There's nothing better than to feel great about what you just donated, and that we're genetically built to feel good to give. So give people as many reasons as possible to do that in a way that doesn't seem forced, transactional. Here's a butter braid.
Right. It's interesting because as I'm even thinking about some of the bigger events that I've been a part of, whether I've done them as a part of the planning committee or I was just attending,
right?
I think we get sucked back into that transactional mindset, even with large scale events where it's like the silent auction, let's say, is the thing, right? And it's like, this is going to be very valuable for people, Patrick. At least I certainly hope so. Because I just don't know that the idea of the best fundraiser I was ever at. I mean, it had a silent auction, but the MC, they featured 3 people.
Yes.
Who immediately were impacted by the work of the organization. And one of them happened to be a delightful young child, which, who doesn't love a shiny, bright child? But the idea that, so if you don't feel like you can get your head around your organizational story, then think of your top 3 benefactors, like the 3 people that have benefited from your organization's work in the past year.
Yes.
And figure out a way to support them to tell their story, right? Because that's all your organization's story is. The culmination of the people that benefit from being a part of it. When I think about the organizations of stuff I've attended, we don't do a good enough job of that.
Yes.
People are like, no one wants to sit through a program. Well, actually, yeah, they do, because they know that they're there to give their money. They know that. It's not like a big secret, right? When you know you're going to a fundraising gala or an event, you know that that's what's expected.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think that becomes training your donor base, training your community to know that this is a fundraiser, not a friend raiser. We're not here to give you a good deal on a basket of hand-woven mittens. Like, that's not what you're going to the event for. You're going to the event because you know that what's raised is going to make an impact in your community. The best thing that you can do as an event, for any event, any size, anywhere, whatever,
hit us,
is doing a fund a need. Okay? So it's a portion of your program where you stop all the fun and games and say, I hope you're having a great time. I hope you enjoyed the food. I hope you enjoyed the entertainment. The real reason why we're here tonight is to raise money for this. Tonight, we're going to try and raise X amount of dollars in the next 5 or 10 minutes by having people in the room raise their hands at certain levels of financial gifts. We're going to start at this level, whether it's $5,000 or $500, whatever it is. We're going to go all the way down to $100. When you feel like you are moved to give at this level, we're going to try to raise, let's just say $10,000 tonight. Is there anybody in the room who'd be willing to donate $5,000 tonight to help us reach our goal of 10 to make an impact for blah, blah, blah? And you sit there and you wait and you shut up. So you
Holy
wait.
balls,
now it's
Patrick.
uncomfortable. Now it's uncomfortable.
I'm like seriously like sweating through my NDSU sweatshirt here. Like, like thinking about this actually playing out. Have you done this in a small community?
I've done it in every community imaginable, and it works every single time. Now, there's a bit, and I'll get to this, but so you go through the whole thing. Now, if nobody gives you at $5,000, quickly go, hey, you can't blame a guy for trying. You go on to the $2,500 level, 1,000, 500, 250, and 100. At the end of the night, you should be able to have everybody raise their hand at least $100 or whatever number that you come up with, okay? And you raise a crap ton of money in a very short period of time to make maximum impact on 100% tax-deductible donation to your charity. It should be the pinnacle of every single person's event because they gather the money as a community and as a group and as an organization and as a room to fund this thing that's going to make maximum impact. Now, your job as a fundraiser is to fill the room with people who are already committed to a level.
Got it.
You know that you've had a conversation with somebody in advance about raising their hand at $2,500 or 1,000 or a couple 500s so that you build momentum in the room to draw out from those that aren't in on the bit to raise their hand in solidarity of this organization's goal to raise whatever money there is. People pay me a lot of money to tell them this advice. And it's invaluable to any organization because any size group can do it. And it's the most critical part to any fundraising event ever. You need to ask for money and do it in a way that makes everybody in the room feel like they were a part of a success. But if you don't make an ask and you don't emphasize the need, nobody is going to assume you need it. And so I think a lot of people who are in fundraising events feel like they've already done enough due diligence to say, okay, we're all prepared to give money, right? And they don't say it out loud, but they just assume. Nobody knows. If you don't tell them you need money, nobody will give you money. If you don't tell them that you're raising money, nobody's going to give you money. If you don't give them a reason to make maximum impact in the room, nobody's going to give you money. It's just not going to be. So it doesn't matter if you have a silent auction or a live auction or a wine pull or a raffle or what other thing that you're going to come up with as a sort of a nickeling and diming kind of thing. If you don't have a fund and need at your event and you aren't purposeful with your ask about what you're raising money for that night, you are not going to have as successful of a fundraiser as you think you're going to have. And it's just absolutely critical to do that every single time. And have conversations with people who are already committed to the event to raise their hand at certain levels, which means you already know at least a portion of what you're going to raise night of. So it de-stresses you as a fundraiser and de-stresses you as an event planner. You already know that you've got 5 people raising their hand at $1,000 a piece or $500 a piece. That's either $5,000 or that's $2,500 that you already have. You already know you've got that. And now you can build your entire event around it.
Oh my goodness. I have this feeling that as people listen to this, they're going to be like, okay, I want to talk to this guy. Because you've given, and honestly, you're going to have to come back.
I will.
Yeah, well, of course you will.
Let me know.
Naturally, you will.
And I love talking about it because I think it's so interesting that I think people don't understand that they can do this. And anyone can do this.
I think you're right. You're absolutely right.
Yes.
Even just listening to you talk about it.
I know it's true.
Because you've seen it work.
I've seen it work all the time. And it takes just a process and an understanding that this is both a science and an art. Mm-hmm. And the science is just building momentum in the room and making sure you get your ducks in a row prior to. Right. The art is how well you tell your story. And combining those two, you make yourself a fundraising success. And you get to say, I raised a bunch of money for my community and we got everybody involved and everybody feels great about it.
Yeah. And the craziest thing about what you're talking, I'm honestly going to tell you, I've never seen that happen. I've been to a lot of fundraising events and I've never seen a fund and need happen or go down live. I've never seen that happen. And I think the fact that I have a knee-jerk kind of feeling about it suggests to me that it is highly underutilized.
Very much so. And you will find some people in the room offended that you asked them for money.
And how do you suggest people work through that? Because man, if we are nothing if not people pleasers around up in this part of the country.
Yep. And you know what? Maybe it would be better that you go to our spaghetti feed for $5.
Yeah.
It's not for everybody. And I think this is another thing that you need to fill the room with people who understand that you're fundraising, not giving away stuff for free and you can have a good time, but your main purpose and main objective is fundraising. And if you have as a fund and need as your pinnacle event or pinnacle portion of your event, if that's the reason people come, people understand that it's a fundraiser. And you can now shift the momentum of your organization into saying that this event, this one, we might have a bunch of fun events or throughout the year, great. But this event right now, this is about fundraising. And if you're not comfortable with it, that's totally okay. We're not going to be offended that you don't show up. But save room for people who've got the willingness and the understanding that this is important work we're doing. We're raising money for important stuff, period. And it might not be the place for you. And that's okay.
And it is okay. Well, it's kind of like what we talked about at the very beginning, that you're really looking for alignment. You're looking for heart alignment, not just pocketbook alignment. That's what people kind of forget here. It's like people might have the capacity, but they might not give a flying flip about your cause. And that's okay.
It's okay.
What we want to do is help align that person with a cause that they maybe would really want to, because the whole idea of giving generously, it's like a beautiful service, right? It comes from this otherworldly place, right? It often feels like you're getting more back than you gave away. That we want to find that and we want to nurture that. And then when it happens, we want to celebrate it.
I know. Yeah.
And that's what also, again, this whole conversation is really around small towns. But the fact that I was just talking yesterday to someone and we're in the middle of it for, our foundation and every small group, I hope that they can take something away from this. And ultimately, if somebody listening to this is like, oh my gosh, I want that guy in my corner, because you do, people. You do. He's fantastic. what would you encourage them to do first to get in touch with you? Or is there like a resource you'd have them read or get your book? Clearly, we'll link to all of these things in the show notes, of course. But what would you want them to do?
If you want some great resources, follow me on social media or join sort of the do-gooders group that I've got going on through Do Good Better Consulting Facebook page and stuff. I give out free info and stuff like that. And here's the other thing. Just ask questions. Find somebody who knows what they're doing and just ask. We also live in a community that really likes giving out advice and would help at all. And so just asking for, hey, just want to bounce an idea off you. This is really the Midwest is notorious for it. Yep. They'll give you some advice. It'd be great. Don't be scared of doing something different. Find what makes it interesting to you and embrace it as an event, but really concentrate on what's the purpose of you fundraising and what's the purpose for. If you can figure that out, if that's number one priority. And if you can do that and tell that story, people will be naturally gravitating towards you on how they can help because they understand clearer now than most other organizations who are asking for money. That's my number one piece of advice.
You have been, you're my work husband. So of course I love talking to you, but I really think the work that you're doing, it's always been epic. And now it's epic for all of us, which is really fantastic versus working. You were not meant to be constrained, my friend. You were meant to fly. So cheesy.
Well, and again,
true.
I'm such a fundraising dork anyway. I just love talking about this stuff. And I really love the idea that anybody can do this. And so if you feel like you can't do it, you can. And if you feel frustrated, reach out and we'll get it done. It's going to be fun. So we could have like 15 more episodes of this because I really think it's important work. And especially
I do too.
In small towns, it's a challenge.
Well, so here's the challenge to everybody that's listening. What else do you want to know? I want to know that because Patrick and I we're pals. Like he can come back any old time.
Sure can.
Yeah, right. And I want to thank you seriously for your time today. So helpful.
Absolutely.
So helpful.
Oh, well, awesome. Well, thanks for having me on. I this anytime, first of all. And then, if you have any questions, let's do another one. Let's just do a whole Q&A session.
Whole Q&A, right. Throw them out at us, people.
Let's do it.
We'll do that.
I love it.
That'd be perfect. Okay. Love you.
Bye.
Thanks for listening to this week's episode of the Small Town Big Talk Show. If you enjoyed today's show, we invite you to subscribe on Stitcher, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts, and we'd love for you to leave us a 5-star review. The more reviews we get, the easier it will be for other small town friends to find us. We encourage you to keep on living big in your small town because the size of your life is not determined by your zip code.